A San Antonio minister has returned from Romania with pictures of what hasn't been seen in that country in nearly 50 years. The Reverend Sammy Tippit was invited to preach the gospel message after the fall of Nicolae Ceausescu. Reverend Tippit met with our Tony Fama today and shared with him some exclusive pictures of what may be the rebirth of religion in Romania.
So we have a choice to make.
What you're seeing was incomprehensible just 3 weeks ago. In Timișoara, where the revolution began, Romanians had lived in a society for nearly a half-century in which they were told God did not exist.
There is a God! There is a God!
San Antonio Reverend Sammy Tippit, pictured to the left of your screen, was invited to preach the gospel after Nicolae Ceausescu was overturned and executed. Romanian church leaders told him how 200,000 people kneeled and prayed in a city square. In the background, church bells can be heard.
Christ could come into my heart.
Ask them to follow me in the Lord's Prayer, and we prayed.
You prayed the Lord's Prayer, so 200,000 people.
Yes, they knelt in this place, and they followed me in prayer.
But prayer came in many forms. This orchestra practiced, no longer in fear of punishment. Reverend Tippit met with members of the National Salvation Front, the interim government. Titus Colcia believes democracy must replace a failed communist system.
We have been lied to years with Marxism, with Leninism, and no one in the country want anymore to hear about it.
The Reverend told us how, for a time, Ceausescu's secret police replaced dictatorship with anarchy.
The Securitate, the secret police, actually infiltrated the apartment buildings around the street, and they were shooting anyone who walked outside of their apartment.
Reverend Tippit says Romania faces a dilemma. Right now, the majority of the new government is made up of communists, in large part because they are the only ones with experience in governing. It's hoped elections scheduled for later this year will change all of that and place Romania on the road to pluralism. Tony Fama, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
I had everything going for me that our society says is good and honorable. I had scholarship offers to study in some of the great universities in this nation, and had everything that a young man could want, but I was empty on the inside. I remember I was being rushed by a number of the fraternities, and I'd been awarded Outstanding Youth Speaker in North America, and I would go one weekend after another weekend to a party, and everything was a party because I was trying to cover up the emptiness that was on the inside. Everybody thought I was Mr. Popular, Mr. Happy, but on the inside I was crying. There was a person on the inside of me that was crying out, saying, what is life all about? I don't have any meaning. I don't have any purpose in life. And I met a young man who was from the opposite background from me, and yet he had purpose and direction for his life. He had a sense of there was a foundation under him. He didn't have the educational opportunities. He didn't have the family life that I had, but he had a purpose and a joy in life that I knew nothing about. And he said that it came from a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And that night, for the first time in my life, I really prayed. Now, don't misunderstand me. I had prayed before and said, oh, Lord, help me out of this situation. But I really wanted to know God. And I prayed and I said, God, if you're real, I want to know you. Come into my heart.
Your ministry is called God's Love in Action.
Right. Back in the early 70s, we formed this ministry, God's Love in Action. I was in full-time evangelism for about 8 years, and then I pastored for 8 years following that. And for the past 4 years, we have been traveling into, well, we began by just traveling into Romania and ministering there, but since then it's expanded all over the world.
You pastored in Germany.
Right. I was a pastor of, I joke and say I was a pastor of a real big-time church. I was pastor of the Han Baptist Church in Han, Germany. Han is the short of the word Hähnchen, which means chicken. So I was pastor of the Chicken Baptist Church in Chicken, Germany, way out in the boondocks, and but a tremendous experience.
I'm curious, what led you to West Germany? When was that?
That was in 1978,
okay.
and I had been traveling in evangelism quite a bit in Europe, and I had preached in that church. But there was a point in my life where I came to the place where I felt God wants me to go deeper with Him. Mm-hmm. I had this great evangelistic ministry reaching many, many people, but I felt like my life was not growing deeper with Christ, and I felt this great need. So I felt like I needed to get in one place and have some time to go deep. And I asked the Lord, I said, put me somewhere where nobody knows me, where I'll be out there, I can just get with you and really learn of you. And Han was the backside of nowhere, and so the Lord put me out there, and it was during that time that my wife and I think, grew closer to the Lord, closer to each other, developed some of our deepest relationships, and really received the vision for what God wanted to do with our lives around the world that we're doing right now today.
Sammy, we go back to 1976. You were arrested in the Soviet Union. Tell us about that experience.
Actually, it was in 1974, and I was in Leningrad, and we, didn't know anyone. And we went to the university campus, and we just prayed, said, Lord, who is it that's looking for you? Who is it that you want to touch today? And so we were walking around. We saw a young man sitting by himself on the university campus. We began to speak with him. What we didn't know was we were at the linguistics department of the university. And this young man spoke English, as did most of the young people who were in that area. So we began to talk to him, and he told us an amazing story. He said, all of my life I've been taught there is no God. My parents have taught me there is no God. My government has taught me there is no God. My school has taught me there is no God. I've never believed in God until 2 weeks ago. He said, I looked into the heavens and I said, could there be a God? This couldn't be by accident. There's too much order. There's too much design to the universe and the world. There must be a God. And he said, I prayed for the first time and I said, God, if you exist, would you reveal yourself to me? Mm. And he said, today, God has answered that prayer by sending you here. And it was one of the most thrilling experiences of my life. We witnessed to him, led him to Christ. He went and got some of his friends, invited his friends to come and listen to what I had to say. We began to witness. We were in a big hall, and several hundred young people had gathered around. We were sharing the gospel with them. That lasted 30 minutes before 6 KGB agents came and arrested us. They brought us, they interrogated us for 8.5 hours. After the interrogation, we were actually taken and put under house arrest for 3 days.
Physical abuse?
No physical abuse. Psychological manipulation would be the word I think that I would use. We were threatened with imprisonment. We were told that we would end up in Siberia and be charged with drug charges or spy charges. And we went through this really difficult time. We were also told, and this is an amazing thing, I mean, an incredible thing, they told us that by the year 2000, that Christianity would be extinct in the Soviet Union. Now that's 10 years from now, and what we're going to see and hear about today is incredible. When they told me that back in 1974, just the opposite is taking place in the Soviet Union today. No government, I don't care how big they are, how great they are, no government can stop the work of God. These are incredible historical days in which we are living. God is doing, I would put what is happening today up against any great revival of past history. These are historical moments in which God is working in the life of the church around the world, and especially in Eastern Europe.
Let's go back to December the 17th, 1989, a historic day.
I was in my mother's home. My son came in. We were visiting her for Christmas and said, Dad, something terrible has happened in Timisoara. It's on TV. People have been massacred. Well, I've preached in Timisoara more than any other city in all of Romania. And some of our dearest friends are there, and we began to try to find out what was going on. Within that week's time, I was on several radio broadcasts nationally here in America about it, trying to call for America to help the Romanian people. And a friend of mine got through to Romania. He just pushed redial for 36 hours, finally got through in the middle of the revolution, talked to Dr. Titus Colcia, my dear friend who is now on staff. We'll have a picture of him in just a moment, but is on staff with us now. But he got through, and Titus said to him, tell Sammy to come immediately to Romania. The glory of God is over the nation. Well, I immediately left and took off for Romania. I arrived in Romania on January 1st. When we drove up to the border before the revolution, you know, the first question asked was, do you have Bibles? Do you have guns or weapons, or do you have pornography? All three were considered to be very dangerous. If you had Bibles, you could be in trouble. Well, we pulled up to the border. The border guard came out, he asked us to get out of the van, and he said, do you have any Bibles, and are you a Christian? And I thought, oh no, here we go again. And I said, yes, I am a Christian. And he threw his arms open wide and said, welcome to Romania.
Oh.
I didn't know it, but my friend Titus had been elected to the new government, transitional government. He came running out. He was in the customs building. He came running out. We hugged, embraced. We prayed right there and gave glory to God in that almost same spot that I had been kicked out before. And I began to go throughout the nation, and I recognized a hunger immediately. And God gripped my heart with something. I'd like to just show everyone here that it just gripped my heart. I have here a flag. This is a Romanian flag. This comes from the mayor's office of the city of Galatz.
Oh, really?
They gave me this as a remembrance of what we have done in Romania here. And you can see right here is a hole in the middle of the Romanian flag. Now, all over the country, you saw these flags flying from buildings with the hole in it. And you can see at the top just a little bit the star there that was cut out. That what they cut out was the symbol of communism. And this flag speaks volumes about what is happening in Romania. The whole society has rejected communism. But what gripped my heart was this. I said, you know, something is going to replace the hole in this flag. The only question is, what is going to replace it? Is it going to be the pornography people? Is it going to be the occults? Is it going to be materialism or humanism? What's going to replace that hole? Titus and I had long discussions. He said, Sammy, our nation is in a political crisis, but greater than that is an ideological and moral crisis. We must do something to reach the nation with the gospel. He and I teamed up, and we decided to do that. He asked me to come back to Romania and preach, and I said, Titus, my schedule's full. So what we decided, we started changing a few things around, and I said, look, I'm going to the Soviet Union, what we just discussed just a moment ago. I'm going there in May, but what maybe I could do is I could come in for 3 days and just meet, and we can decide what to do in the future. 3 weeks before I was to go in May, he called me, he said, Sammy, I've got a football stadium. The first football stadium ever in the history of Romania. I preached. It was a week before the elections. It began a whole new era of evangelism for Romania. Now, we finished this crusade. 3 days, had about 4,500 people come to Christ. We finished this crusade in Baia Mare in Romania. Left there, went to Chisinau. Now, what I was to do in Chisinau was to teach on prayer from my book, The Prayer Factor. So I went in and was teaching the leaders on prayer, but we had just come out of this great historical experience in Romania. So they said, would you come and do that in our city? And I said, well, I would love to. And boy, we started making plans, and a committee was formed. All the churches, the unregistered, the registered, the Baptist, the Pentecostal, the Romanian speaking, the Russian speaking, all the churches came together and voted to have me come back for a crusade in the football stadium of the Republic. Well, the last thing that they said before we left there in May, the head man of the Evangelical Council of Evangelicals and Baptists for Moldova was called in by the government. They wanted to know what we were doing there. And he told them that we wanted to hold a crusade in a football stadium, and we were making those plans. And they said, well, we'll give permission for that. The only thing we have to check out is this guy, Sammy Tippit, to make sure he's okay. And then when that man told me that, I thought, oh no. You know, if they check me out, you know, I've got a record. And so I said, they'll never let me back into the country. Well, little did I know what was going to happen. I came back to the United States. Within 2 weeks, I had an official invitation from the churches and from the government to come to Chisinau. Titus went back in to make preparation. When he went in, he met with the mayor, the city council, the government officials. They gave us the football stadium. They said, we want to make sure if this American comes over to preach that there's lots of people in the stadium, so we want to give you the TV. to cover this thing.
Wow.
We couldn't believe this. So, you know, they were saying all these things. Well, then Titus said, Sammy, we ought to present, could be a one-time and a lifetime opportunity. We need to present the gospel to every person in the city through literature. And I said, how are we going to do that, Titus? I said, you know, we're not a Billy Graham organization. We're just a little bitty outfit. And I said, how are we going to do that? So when I came back, I went to Lima, Peru for a citywide crusade there. I received a phone call from Dick Eastman, who is president of Every Home for Christ, formerly World Literature Crusade. Dick said, Sammy, we believe you're God's man for Eastern Europe. We want to work with you. We would like to, we have a campaign where we want to put a gospel presentation in every home of every capital city of every republic in the Soviet Union. He said, you're going to Kishinev, why don't we team up?
Ah. There's the provision for the literature.
And they had worked with Billy Graham in the past. That's who they worked with. We put together this little pamphlet here. This is a pamphlet, and the top part's in Romanian, the bottom part's in Russian, so both languages. And it says, Mission Moldavia with Sammy Tippit. At the bottom it says, would you like to have a new life in both the Romanian language and the Russian language with me? And this picture is of that crusade in Baia Mare. And on the back side of it is the details of the crusade. But on the inside of this pamphlet is a gospel presentation in the Russian and the Romanian language. And so we scrambled to get this translated. We scrambled to get this put together. And at the end of this gospel presentation is a prayer that they can pray to receive Christ. If they pray that prayer, we say that we will enroll them in a correspondence Bible study course. Now, we had to get all this translated, the course translated into both Russian and Romanian before we went. We had 2 months to get this done. Amazing. And so here's a little form, a decision form for them to fill out, and we did that. Now, this particular pamphlet that you're holding, one identical to that, was placed in the hands before we arrived in Kishinev of every member of the Soviet Parliament. Plus, we gave them a copy of the Bible, I mean, not a copy, we gave them a Bible and one of these presentations of the Republic of Moldavia. Every member of Parliament, 120,000 of these went into every home in Kishinev. We were able to present the gospel to every person. Now, the response was incredible. We didn't know what would happen with the response. You know, we said if you pray to receive Christ and you want to have this, we just tear off this little piece here and mail it in. I asked them when I got to Kishinev, I said, did you get any responses? They laughed. You know what they said? They said the post office will not deliver our mail anymore. There's so much mail they can't deliver it. They make us bring it, vans there to pick it up. 50,000 people responded in Kishinev. The first city we went to was the city of Belzi. And I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. And as a matter of fact, I asked the pastors, and Titus said, Sammy, don't ask them that. But I asked them, I said, is the platform going to be in the middle where we go to one side, or are we going to go both sides? Titus said, Sammy, their faith is much greater than that. And what they were actually anticipating, they told the believers, there were only 1,500 to 2,000 believers in this city of 150,000 people. They said, don't sit in the stadium. You stand around the sides. We're expecting the non-Christians to fill the stadium. So in the stadium, it was filled. When I stood up on the house, how many seats? 10,000 people. That 10,000-seater football stadium was full of non-Christians. 2,000 Christians standing around, and then probably another couple thousand non-Christians standing around as well. So here we were, and you know, I was so nervous. It was like a dream to me come true. Remembering back to being held by those interrogators in Leningrad, and now here I am in a stadium in the Soviet Union to stand to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ. So we had that crusade that night. So you can imagine there was tension because there's been persecution, there's been all of this. People didn't know what to expect. People had never been to an evangelistic meeting before in their lives. So here's the stadium filled, and the tension is thick. Spiritually, Satan has had these people indoctrinated with atheism. Blindness. And that's right. So here they are, you know, and here for the first time publicly the gospel is going to go forth. So I'm up preaching, and now this is amazing. While I'm preaching, there are dignitaries behind me, you know, on the platform, and they're seated and all, and there's bottles of water. It's during the day. And right in the middle of my message, a bottle of water just explodes. I mean, just out of the clear blue. I had no idea what happened. But I look back, and Titus, my friend, is soaking wet. And so I said, oh, Lord. And so I just keep preaching. I get in the middle of John 3:16, and I say, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. And the power goes off. 15 minutes, technicians are running around trying to find out what's happening and what the problem is. They finally get it fixed. No one leaves. I continue preaching. So I come to the place of the invitation. They've never seen anything like this before. Now remember, they've never had a public invitation. So I say, if you would like to know Christ, first I have everyone to stand to their feet and bow their heads. I said, if you would like to know Christ, I want you to raise your hand. No one raises their hand. Now I'm in a dilemma because I'm saying, what's going to happen? If I ask them to come forward and no one comes, then it's going to be embarrassing with the city council being opposed to this. It's going to be an item of ridicule. What should I do? And my heart was pounding. I was, you know, as I was talking, I was praying, and I said, oh God, tell me what to do. So I finally said, all right, if you'd like to know Christ, I'm going to ask you to come forward. One lady, a little peasant lady, comes out, this lady here, and she walks down, and she's holding flowers in her hand. She walks, she's the only person that comes forward. She walks to the platform out of the stands, and with courage, not worrying what anyone would say or think, all by herself. She walks in front of me, she stands there, and then she reaches up to the platform and she hands me flowers. Now, after she does that, she goes to her knees and she begins to cry unto God. As she begins to cry unto God, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds come after her. And at the end, we had 2,000 people that you can see there who come forward and give their hearts to Jesus Christ. All because there was this one lady who was willing to come out and make that commitment and cry unto God. There was a spiritual breakthrough because from that night forward, we saw an incredible response everywhere we went. But it was that one lady's faith. Incredible. It wasn't just this. When that was that night. We heard reports that all the churches were filled with new believers the next day. That was on a Saturday. Then we went on Sunday to Chisinau, the capital of Moldova, a city of 600,000 people. I didn't know what to expect there. We had heard, you know, through the officials that there might be TV coverage. When I arrived there, the television people were waiting for me, and they interviewed me, and I did not have to compromise anything of the gospel. And I come to preach Jesus Christ, that He is the Son of God.
Я приехал сюда, чтобы проповедовать Иисуса Христа, Сына Божьего.
And that He can really make a difference in a person's life, in the life of a people, of a whole nation. He can make a difference in our lives. And through our faith in Him, we find dignity in life. I know in my own experience, I've seen Christ bring together groups of people who once hated one another, but gave them a love.
Я не раз убеждался, что Христос помогал примирить враждующие группы, те, которые между собой имели ненависть, они стали дружественны и стали любить друг друга.
And so my message is that Christ can make a difference in the lives of individuals and in the society here as a whole in Moldavia. I preached that night a gospel message on purpose in life and preached the cross, and the TV covered it. What I did not know, I thought they might broadcast this whole thing to Moldavia. That's what we had put in our newsletter, pray for that. They broadcast it to all of Soviet Moldavia, the whole eastern part of Romania, and part of the Ukraine. 15 million people, we estimate, heard that gospel presentation of me preaching, and then they covered the whole invitation. And you can see the sincerity of the hearts. People come weeping, crying. Now, there were about 4,000 people who came forward here during the invitation time. Most of those adults responded to the message. The TV showed all of this. Right now, right there, I'm giving an explanation of how to become a Christian. The TV broadcast that throughout the Ukraine, throughout Moldavia, and the whole eastern part of Romania. 15 million people heard this, saw this. They prayed together with me. All these 4,000 people prayed with me
right there to receive Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And they showed every bit of this over the TV. We have no idea how many people watching this in the Soviet Union responded. You can see the TV camera there. They honed in on everything. They got the emotion of the situation, and they picked it all up and broadcast it throughout that whole area of the Soviet Union. We know in Beltsy and in Kishinev, where it rained 3 out of 4 nights, we had rain, which made it very difficult, but we had 8,000 people right there come to know Christ in those 5 nights. And then through the literature distribution, we had 50,000 respond. And through TV, if 10% of the people responded, that'd be 1.5 million. But we don't know. We have no idea. It is just the beginning. We are being invited all over the Soviet Union now. Amazing. And for me, this is incredible to go to the major cities, to stand in the football stadiums, to preach in those stadiums the gospel of Jesus Christ, to preach over television. I would never, in my wildest dreams 1 year ago, have dreamed any of this. On the Sunday night that I preached in Kishinev, Monday morning we received a call that we were to come to the mayor's office. Now I really, didn't know what to expect or what was going to happen when I met with the mayor. But when I got there and I came into the mayor's office, we were brought into one side of the room and he entered on another side of the room, and we were facing one another, and the mayor then came to us and he gave some sort of formalities, and we had formalities, and then he came over and he hugged me and embraced me. And he's presenting to me at this particular point a book which is the book of the city of Kishinev, and then I in turn presented to him and the head of the city council of the city of Kishinev a Bible. And then this is what the mayor said to me. You can see him talking there, and this is what he said to me. He said, for many years, we have persecuted the Christians. We have treated them as the dirt on the ground. And he said, we were wrong. Wow. He said, what we need is the morality of the Christians and the faith of the Christians. And then he went on to say, before the communists took over, our forefathers were people of deep faith. And we need to return to the faith of our fathers. I could not believe what I was hearing him say. This mayor right here said, we will now give you back your land to build another church. Then we went to Western Romania, to Arad, and they had a football stadium that holds 15,000 people that they had gotten. The first night, there were 14,000 people in that stadium. The second night, there were 15,000 people in that stadium. And now I want us to see 15 minutes before the final night began. We have an interview that Titus and I were doing. Well, the stadium is packed. It's 15 minutes before time to start, and normally it's 30 minutes after the service starts before everyone's in. So I don't know where all the people are going to be, but I do believe this, that God is going to show us His glory tonight, and we're praying to that end. It's exciting to see what's happening.
My belief is that God is intervening in an unusual way in our history, in shaking the communism to the root of their problems, and in displaying His glory. We need Sammy with his message to shake the hearts of the people in Arad for the glory of God.
I preached on the second coming of Christ, that the gospel would go into all the world, and I said, we're sitting here, or you're sitting in this stadium as a result of what God is doing in these last days. God just moved. The people came, and you can see the sincerity on the faces of the people there as they came forward during the invitation, weeping, wanting to know Jesus Christ. Adults, young people, wanting to know Christ as Lord and Savior. This was the last night before I left to come back to the West, and I cannot tell you the impression that what happened here this evening left on me, to see all of these people. Just look at them. You'll see here just all of these people who are coming. They're still coming forward during this time, coming to know Christ as Lord and Savior.